Happy Monday, everyone. Whether you are virtual, you are distance learning, or if you are in class, we are all doing the same thing today. We are going to be working on adding and subtracting decimals. Hopefully this will be a review from 5th grade. If not, this will be a great starter lesson. So if you are in class, you are going to need your notebook. If you are at home, you are also going to need your notebook or your virtual notebook, whichever one you have created. And if you are at home distance learning, you also are going to need to grab your notebook. Okay, let's get started. Okay, if you are at school, you are going to be given a table of contents. If you are at home, you can create your own table of contents for the first section. This should go on page 2 of your notebook, right after the number expression section. And then we already did long division notes, so that would be page 4, and then we are adding and subtracting decimals on page 5. And there's no handout for this. This is just free writing of notes. So if you're taking a virtual notebook, then you probably want to grab a sheet of paper and take the notes down and then take a picture and add it into your digital notebook. So we are going to follow these simple rules with adding and subtracting decimals. Rule number 1, you're going to line them up, meaning line up the decimals. Number 2, drop it down. Drop the decimal down exactly where it is in the problem. Rule 3, fill them in. Any places that there is nothing there, you're going to add a 0 so that you can add and subtract correctly. And then rule 4, you add or subtract based on what the question says. So let's take a look at what this means. Okay, let's try an addition problem first. So the first thing says to line them up. Right now, this is horizontally written, which horizontally means across. We want to write them vertically. We want to stack them. So lining them up first. Remember with adding, it doesn't matter which one is on top because adding has a commutative relationship. So lining them up, so lining this decimal up would mean that this 18 would go here. And not only are we lining up our decimal when we're doing this, we're also lining up our place values. Fill them in. If there's any places where there's nothing, like right here under the 4, we fill it in with a 0. And then we just add. 4 plus 0 is 4. 9 plus 5 is 14, but we're just going to put a 4 down because you can only have one number in each place value. Bring your decimal down. Carry, just like you normally do with adding. 8 plus 3 is 11, plus that 1 is 12. Carry. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. So our answer for this would be 22 and 44 hundredths. Okay, so the biggest thing to remember is line up the decimal, placing zeros where they belong, and then you add like you normally add. Okay, let's take a look at a subtraction problem. So number 1 rule, we line them up. So we are going to rewrite the problem where they are stacked, and we are going to line up our decimals. Okay, this is a subtraction problem. So when you are subtracting, we have to remember that whatever number comes first should be our top number. Okay, so we have lined them up, then we drop it down. We're going to drop our decimal down. We are going to fill them in. So this needs a 0. You could even put a 0 here if you wanted to. 0 minus 7, you cannot do that because there's nothing to take away from 0. You would end up with a negative number. So what we do is we're going to borrow from the 4. This becomes a 3. This is 10. 10 minus 7 is 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. Also cannot subtract 3 minus 8, so we are going to borrow from the 5. This becomes 13. 13 minus 8 is 5. And 4 minus 0 is 4. And remember, you can always check your answers by re-adding it. So this answer would be 45 and 23 hundredths. So let's take a look at another subtraction problem I see a lot of students struggling with throughout my years of teaching is what do I do when there is not a decimal? For example, like in the number 12. There is a decimal. It's just invisible. So if we stop and we think about that this 1 is in the ones place, we understand in 12 the 2 is in the ones place. So when we stack our problems, we have to line up our place values, and that tells us where our decimal should go in the whole number. There is always a decimal in whole numbers. So now I've lined up my decimals, I fill in my zeros, and I subtract. Remember, whatever number comes first should be on the top when you are subtracting. But in this problem, we cannot do 0 minus 3 or 0 minus 9. We have nothing to borrow. So we have to go all the way over to 2 and borrow 1. This becomes 10, but we have to borrow from that, so it's now a 9. And now this is actually a 10. So 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 9 is 0. 11 minus 10 is 10. But don't forget to drop down that decimal. Okay? I feel like that's a great place to stop. The key is for adding and subtracting decimals is we have to line them up. I should not see this happening. This would be wrong if you did this. Because if you did that, you're saying that the 12 wholes is actually 12 hundredths. And you're saying that the decimal is here in the front, and that is not correct. Do not do that. Make sure you line up your decimals correctly. If there's a whole number, like the number 5, the decimal is always behind it, and you can put as many zeros as you need behind it. Okay, well that is it. Just a quick reminder, we line up our decimals, we drop down our numbers, we fill in any zeros, and then we add or subtract. So for today's lesson, you are going to fill in, you are going to do a Google Slides over adding and subtracting decimals. It honestly should not take you longer than 20, maybe 30 minutes. If you have any questions about what to do on the Google Slides, you can send me a message, or you can wait until 1 o'clock for our Google Meet. This is for everyone. Unless you are in class, you are more than welcome to ask then. Have a great day, guys. Bye.